What's up, Flick Connection? This is Darren, and today I want to give you the top 10 scariest movies currently available on Netflix. So we're officially in October 2017. It's the perfect month to watch scary movies in. All October, I'm going to be giving you a list of the best horror movies currently available on Netflix. I'm starting off with the scariest movies currently available on Netflix. Next week, I'll be doing the funniest horror movies. So if you like these types of videos, click the subscribe button. That way you won't miss any of them. And if you get good recommendations from my videos, please click the like button. It's going to help more people see the video and more people get these recommendations. So let's start with the list. At number 10 is a movie I just watched recently called Demonic. This one's on Netflix. It's fairly new to Netflix. It's a very small movie, but it's essentially about ghost hunters that are investigating a house that has a really nasty history. Basic story, it kind of goes back and forth between the present time and flashbacks via found footage. But it's not really a found footage movie. It's used very sparingly and kind of in a cool way because of the ghost hunter angle. It's not the scariest movie on the list, which is exactly why it's at number 10, but it's still pretty solid, and it's mostly scary through its jump scares, which is a cheap tactic, but that's why it's at number 10. It's going to make you jump. It's going to make you gasp a couple of times, and it's fairly decent. It's got some names and some faces you'll recognize, so if you kind of like the way I'm talking about it, definitely check Demonic out before Halloween. At number 9, it's probably the most polarizing movie on this list. I want to rank it higher, but because so many people hate it, I have to put It Follows at number 9. So why is this one so polarizing? Well, genre lovers, horror genre, enthusiasts tend to really like this movie because it pays homage to classics like the original Halloween, and it also does some new stuff at the same time. So it's really cool in that aspect, but other people didn't like it just because it just didn't deliver what they were expecting. It can be a little slow. The ending is a little vague, which I find really interesting, but I can totally understand why some people didn't like this movie. I will say, though, it's probably the most well-made movie on this list. It's very well crafted. I can't wait to see what that new director comes out with next. At number 8, it's a movie that's, in my opinion, kind of overhyped, and that's the Babadook. This is a fairly recent release. It got a lot of hype, a lot of high praise, and it is very good. It is a good movie, but I think the hype sort of exceeded, its worth a little bit, and so I was sort of let down by it, but it's still a solid horror flick. It's about a mother and a son living in this house, and it's sort of post, traumatic, depression, plays a role without saying too much, but it's based on this storybook that is in the movie, and the family is essentially terrorized by this being that lives in the house, so it's a lot of that sort of stuff. It does have an art house vibe. Everything in the house is gray. Everything's painted gray, so it's a little bit surreal in some aspects, but it's got some terrifying imagery. It's unique. It's different than a lot of things that you'll see. So this is one of the better movies on the list. But because of the hype, I just didn't want to put it higher up on the list, just lending that much further to the hype, if that makes sense. At number 7, I'm going to go really off the beaten path with They Look Like People. This is a very, very small film, small cast, small sets, but it is creepy. Now, I will say it is a very, very slow burn. When it gets to where it's going, it really delivers. It really just creeped me out. I was really surprised with how well this movie grabbed me, but it takes some time getting there, so you do have to have that patience. If you tend to be fairly patient with movies, particularly like indie, small movies, if you have the patience to sort of sit there and enjoy the experience, you will like this one. If you want to watch something really creepy and scary, you will like this movie. If you got to have stuff flying at your face and you got to have those jump scares like I talked about at number 10, Demonic, This movie may not do it for you. The end certainly will, but you're probably not going to get there. So watch this one based on what I'm telling you. Take my recommendation based on what type of person you are and whether or not you think you're going to be able to sit through a movie like this. At number 6, I want to go with a little bit of a throwback in the sense that it's the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but it's the remake. There's a lot of remakes. It's the remake from 2003 that's currently available on Netflix. There's a lot of really bad Texas Chainsaw Massacre remakes. This one is not bad, to say the least. Now, it's not a masterpiece, but it's essentially just a retelling of the original, and it serves no other purpose other than sort of introducing a younger audience into it that may just not be able to watch something that old. Some people, for whatever reason, just can't watch something that was filmed before they were born. This one, it looks great. R. Lee Ermey, the drill sergeant from Full Metal Jacket, plays the sheriff in this, and he's super creepy. In fact, his performance is the only reason I think this movie made the list. Now, it has some other redeeming qualities in that. It doesn't totally, I don't think it disrespects the original, so that's good. If you haven't seen this one, maybe because you avoided it because you just are physically, repulsed by remakes of movies that you love, I'd give it a chance. It doesn't crap all over the original, and it's available. It's a solid horror movie. If you've never seen Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I definitely recommend watching the original, but this one would not be a bad place to start or a bad way to follow up the original. At number 5 is a movie I really, really liked on Netflix. It's called The Devil's Candy. This one is really short. It's well under an hour and a half, but it really was just interesting the entire time. It's different. Metalheads, you will love this movie. The main character is just into metal, plays some metal. He's an artist. And after he moves into a new house with his family, his art starts to take on this really sort of just disturbing turn, and he doesn't know why, and a bunch of other things start to happen. So it's really interesting. It's different. It's just got a different vibe and a different story than anything I've seen. So I really liked it for that. The performances are great. It's got some faces you're going to recognize. So this is a solid pick for Halloween, and it's probably one you have not seen. At number 4, I'm going with a movie that I watched several years ago that I just still remember. I only watched it the one time, but I still remember it. It stuck with me. I thought it was really solid, and that's called The PACT. Now, there is a sequel to The PACT. It's called The PACT 2. Avoid that one. From everything I've seen about it, it's total garbage. But The PACT is a solid little horror film that did well on the festival circuit and didn't get a big release, but it looks like a movie that could have got a good release. It's polished, it looks good, and essentially, if you like the sort of alone in a creepy house, paranormal stuff happening, things flying off of walls, this is a good one, and it doesn't go where you think it's going to go. That's all I'll say. It's got an interesting twist in it, and the ride to get there is really enjoyable, and it's scary. I mean, if you watch this with the right person, particularly someone that gets easily scared, this would be a really great Halloween movie to watch. At number 3, we're getting better and better on this list with Hush. I really, really dig this movie. A lot of people saw Oculus from a couple of years ago. That did really well in the theaters. It surprised a lot of people as to how good it was. I think it's great. This is the same director. This movie didn't get a wide release, but it's solid. And for this one, I do need to tell you, not the twist, but the hook. The thing about it that makes it different. And basically, it's a slasher movie, home invasion, Halloween style, solid movie, straightforward. It's not particularly stylish, but the victim, the main character in this movie, is deaf. This is given to you, this information is given to you right away, so I'm not spoiling anything. That's what makes this movie so interesting. There's so many situations that are so different because she's deaf. It just makes for a completely different experience. If you like this genre, this one is a must watch. And number 2, believe it or not, I actually have a documentary on here. It's called The Nightmare, and it is about nightmares. So it mostly focuses on individual interviews with people who suffer from crippling night terrors on a nightly or semi-regular basis. and they're just recounting some of the worst ones that they've had, and they are terrifying, especially because the creators paired up their interviews and their stories with reenactments. And there's some really startling similarities between these dreams that complete strangers have. This one really freaked me out, particularly because I do have frequent nightmares. Nothing on the level that these people had, but just the idea of being afflicted with something like these people is terrifying to me. I really had trouble going to sleep a couple of nights after watching this one, and I can't say that about many movies, so that's why this one made the number 2 list. Maybe it's just me, but I think if you watch this one in the right setting, and particularly if you have nightmares on any kind of a regular basis, this one's going to unsettle you, to say the least, and it's probably going to give you at least one sleepless night. And at number 1, it's another movie I've watched years ago. It's back on Netflix now. It's super creepy. It's super dark. It's just, I'm surprised I never heard of it. It's called The CANAL. I don't want to say too much, but it's dark. It's got a very interesting story. It does not take very long getting into it. It's got a couple of faces you're going to recognize, but it's not a big movie. But it just wasn't quite like anything I'd seen before. Now, I think the end maybe gets a little bit predictable for some people. You're going to maybe see it coming based on some other things you've seen, but that doesn't break this movie for me at all. It's got some really terrifying sequences in it, and I just still remember it being really scary, and it's been a couple of years. There's major releases that a lot of people talk about that I don't remember 6 months later, much less probably 6 years later since I've seen this. So The CANAL, I barely noticed it's back on Netflix. They do such a poor job, I think, of putting the best movies right in front of you. It's sort of a mixed bag, which is why I like doing videos like this. So if this video helped you, definitely give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more of the videos I've got coming down the pipe about what to watch on Netflix, as well as some other great movie content, definitely subscribe, and you will see me next time.